taking a look at those two proposals that are under consideration this week, the Colts and Eagles have proposed making it mandatory for each team to have an overtime possession before moving to sudden death. Meanwhile, the Titans propose a tweak that would implement mandatory possession for each team unless the team that has the first possession scores a touchdown and converts a successful two-point attempt. So a lot of this is on the table. This is something we haven't seen in quite some time, but when it comes to overtime, a lot of people were confused about the Bills and Chiefs and how that played out. Even Josh Allen went to Twitter, said he didn't like it. Even in the Super Bowl, a lot of teams and players mentioned this was something they needed to change. We'll see how that pans out with those league meetings here. All right, just a few minutes up the road, of course, we find our guys Tim Prisco and Jeff Canfora in the mix. Of course, that kid there. And Pete, I want to start with you. Expectations, we talk about those overtime rules, the discussion you might hear. What are you expecting to hear this week?
Yeah, I think this is one of those rules that there's a lot of momentum for. I personally am against it. I think if you have 11 guys on defense, go stop somebody. Everybody talks about the Bills and Chiefs playoff game, but we forget the week after when the Bengals actually did get a stop in overtime and won the game. So I'm against it. I think you pay defensive players to make plays. Everybody will say, oh, it's an offensive system now. It's an offensive rules that favors the offense. Go stop somebody. Don't change it.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of people who would say, okay, let's try something different. Let's let both teams have the ball. I don't hear owners saying that, though, and they're the ones who make the decision. You hear it a little bit from coaches, although I talked to a few coaches in here at the AFC breakfast who said they wouldn't vote for anything that extends overtime because the game's physical enough. We're asking these guys to play more games than ever. We're adding playoff, more teams in the playoffs, more teams playing more volume. I can tell you this, if the Titans thing passes with a two-point conversion, I'd be shocked. I haven't heard really any momentum for that. There is more conversation, like Pete said, about allowing both teams to have the ball. My gut instinct is when we leave here in a couple days, overtime will be as is.
This is a question I asked Brandon Beam, remember at the Combine. Okay, say you had to play a playoff game in the first round, you go to overtime, and then you got to come back the following week and play a team that's sitting there rested. What about that? I mean, that's not an advantage for anybody. I don't like it. Just play football.
Listen to Pete.
Right.
All right, we'll see how that pans out, fellas, there. I want to take a look at Cincinnati, one of those teams that was in the Super Bowl. The Bengals, of course, getting there. Somehow they can compete on the field. We saw that, but when it comes to the finances, it's a different story. I want you to take a look at the Forbes number here, this article. Just $2.1 billion when it comes to the net worth if we're talking the Brown family, but then you pair it with the Rams who actually just won the Super Bowl. They saw them 10.7. And Pete, my question to you is, how have the Bengals been able to keep up with some of the financial elite in this league?
Well, it's tough for the small market teams. I mean, I covered a team in Jacksonville for years that was a small market team that was banging its head against the wall because you can't get the same kind of revenue streams that the big market teams can and teams like the Cowboys can. So it's tough. You have to be better scouting. And that's where Duke Tobin, who doesn't get the due he deserves inside the Bengals building for what he's done. They have a small scouting staff. They just know how to go out and get football players, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. And that's how you have to compensate for not having the revenues. You have to be really good at scouting players.
Well, I would say this. A couple $1 billion is nothing to scoff at. I mean, I'm not shedding any tears for any NFL owner. I got news for you. That's been in the Brown family forever. Think about the generational wealth that they've made off of that team, and they don't have a lot of outside business interests. That's a ma and pa operation. I would also say this year the cap is $208 million. Every NFL owner, before he sells a beer, plays a game, sells a ticket, sells a hot dog, will have $360 million in his pocket from the TV deals alone, which doesn't include the next Sunday ticket deal, doesn't include the gates from these international games that they keep expanding to, and the gambling money's just coming through. The Bengals, when they made the playoffs 5 straight years with Marvin Lewis, they spent money. They were top 10 to 12 spending team in cash payroll every year. The question is going to be moving forward after the Deshaun Watson deal, $230 million fully guaranteed. Whatever future guarantees are not paid in year one have to be put in an escrow account. So Jimmy Haslam next February is going to have to cut a check for $180 million and leave it in an escrow account. How many owners are willing to do that, plus pay the player, plus give up all those picks? That's going to be a little tough for Baltimore. That's going to be a little tough for Cincinnati when we start talking about other quarterbacks. We're going to extend Dean Spanos with Justin Herbert. Is that something they've traditionally done? No, but guess what? The stakes have gone up. You're looking at close to $50 million a year, fully guaranteed, no trade clause. Get used to it.
And here's the other thing. cash over cap. And the small market teams, it's tougher for them to come out for the cash. You know that.
But Buffalo
There's
right
been
now,
teams-
Buffalo right now is at 238, second in the NFL.
Cash.
It's up to the owners.
Cash.
I'm talking that. Yeah, they're 30 million over.
JLC, you mentioned, of course, generational wealth, and no more teams come to mind when it comes to the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. It's been very quiet this offseason. This time last year, we would have heard from about 5 or 10 times. He will be in attendance there for the league meetings. What do you expect from his impact there this week?
Look, the Cowboys, it's the end of a cycle. It's an end of a window, whether they want to admit it or not. They had a period of time where Dak Prescott wasn't making money, where they were able to put assets into other areas. You look at the Amari Cooper trade. You look at what they paid DeMarcus Lawrence. And there's been an egress of talent. They've lost good players. People are leaving the building. There's still questions about Mike McCarthy. As for, Jerry Jones, look, he's had some illness. He's obviously been some controversy surrounding him again, some things that have come out in the media this offseason about former head of communications, Rich Dalrymple. I don't know that we're going to see Jerry Jones with all the bluster looking for the cameras, making the pronouncements he normally makes. It's been a very difficult offseason for them off the field. It's been a difficult offseason for them on the field.
And Mike McCarthy, the head coach, isn't here. And he stayed back supposedly to focus on improving that team.
He didn't want to answer questions about Sean Payton, is my guess.
Probably, and we know that's sitting out there. I
Yes.
mean, Sean Payton is sitting back. He's going to sit out the year, and he will be back probably next year, and he might be the coach of the Cowboys. So a lot of pressure on Jerry Jones, a lot of pressure on Mike McCarthy, a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott. When your talent goes away around you, that puts more focus on the quarterback to live up to his contract. This is a big year for the Cowboys. It's a big year for Dak Prescott and a big year for Mike McCarthy.
Per usual, they find a way to dominate the headlines with or without wins, depending on what we've seen on the field there. Jason La Canfora, Pete Prisco will be there all week. Appreciate your time, fellas. Tap it in this morning, HQ. The Pick 6 Pod, the fellas, it's Mailbag Monday. Will Brinson and John Preach answer those questions and focusing on the QBs. What's the situation with Baker Mayfield? Also a debate about Matthew Stafford and Matt Ryan, the Matt on Matt crime. Download and give him a follow.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.